So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much, Sarah. I, along with Salesforce, have had the honour and just pure pleasure of supporting peace talks for the last 4 years. But this year, I cannot think of a more important time to be holding the conversations that you're going to be hearing today. Especially given, as we saw in the films, the ever-turbulent times that we are living in. It is also for that reason that I am so pleased to be speaking today with somebody that I have personally come to admire very much as I've got to know him throughout the COVID pandemic. So please join me in welcoming into conversation the CEO of the WHO Foundation, Mr. Anil Soni. So Anil, you have had an incredibly distinguished career in international health, ranging from working with the Global Fund to fight AIDS, malaria and tuberculosis, Clinton Health, and at Beatrice, where you were responsible for developing some of the groundbreaking treatments for HIV and TB. Could you tell us a little bit about why you entered the world of international health, and perhaps a couple of career highlights that have really stood out in your mind?
Wow, career highlights. Well, first of all, thank you, Charlotte, and thanks to those who've organized this event. And it's a pleasure to be in the room with warriors for peace. Maybe warriors isn't the right term, but advocates and people who are working hard to make the world a better place. And apologies to those whose back, where our backs are turned to you. So to answer your question, and I'm really pleased to do this with the awareness that there's young people in this room and watching. 25 years ago, when I was in university, I had the opportunity to volunteer in Ghana, and I was living in a village of 500 people. And I asked one of my good friends that summer a very basic question, which is, what can I do in my life that will have relevance for you? How do I take my privilege, which isn't a word I was using then, but it was a concept I understood, and leverage that privilege to have an impact on your life or the lives of his children. And what he taught me in that moment is what's become my philosophy and work, which is that all lives have equal potential, but not equal opportunity. And what I can do with my privilege is work towards ensuring that everyone has an equal shot at developing their potential, at manifesting their essence, at finding joy and finding purpose. That's why I do what I do, because I found that health is a prerequisite towards manifesting our essence and achieving peace. So that's what motivated me. And in terms of a career highlight, let me answer this briefly by saying that, again, I've had the great opportunity to work in the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. I've worked for a company, I've worked for the UN, I've worked for nonprofits, I've been an advocate and activist, I've also been a corporate executive. And what I have found so powerful is when all of those forces can come together. I think there's a lot of misunderstanding across sectors. People who work for nonprofits see profiteering in the corporate sector and see an absence of partnership opportunity. But in fact, when those organizations and people, because we're all people at the end of the day, when we come together with shared mission and shared values, we can achieve wonders. And I had the opportunity to do that, particularly when I was working for President Clinton, and we found fundamentally new ways to lower the price of medicines and accelerate access to those medicines around the world. And that was with the corporate sector.
I can't think of a better answer, actually, to the first question of these peace talks, both inspiring but also insightful. And I'm going to come back to a couple of those points as we talk further. But let's touch on the pandemic, because COVID-19 has touched nearly every single person on this earth. Did you ever think, given your career in international health, that we would be in such a position as a global community and such a huge health crisis?
No, is the short answer. I'm no soothsayer, but I will say that I work in global health, and I was surrounded by friends and colleagues who were worried that it might get much worse than anyone expected, because it's a virus. And when you think about it in purely scientific terms, given the characteristics of the virus that were understood last year, there were many people who suspected that it could be very infectious and last, and they were right. That wasn't me, but what I will say that I felt at the beginning of the pandemic, and my job and my titles have nothing to do with this. I was a human being who lived in New York with my partner in March of 2020, and I felt solidarity with everyone on the planet in a way that I had never felt before. Because we were living in fear and anxiety and uncertainty, and all of us everywhere were reacting to the same bit of news, reacting to the same, I don't want to use the term enemy, but experience. And we were all trying to stay at home to keep ourselves and each other safe. And I think there's potency in the fact that we all are experiencing the same thing, or at least we were last year.
That actually leads me perfectly to the next question. As you say, at one point we were all experiencing together. It really did feel like global unity. What's your hope that we can capture that spirit and that we can keep it moving forward as we as a global community come to address some of the other challenges that we all face together, such as health, education, and climate?
It's an important moment in human history right now. And again, I'm speaking to an audience of people who well appreciate this, but I think it's unique. A year ago, we were united. Today, we are not. Vaccine inequity is a moral failure. It's also economically, epidemiologically self-defeating. And yet that is our reality. 80% of the 3 billion vaccines that have been made available have gone to 10 countries. Less than 1% of people in low-income countries have been vaccinated. It is a stark divide. It's almost the worst divide I've ever experienced in my life. And yet, there's good news. And I want to hold on to the good news and think about how we can find power in this moment of need. Never before in the history of the world have we responded collectively so quickly to a common opponent. I've worked my whole life on HIV/AIDS. It took 15 years to develop effective treatment and another 15 years to get that treatment to people around the world. 30 years. 18 months into this pandemic, you have effective vaccines and you have 3 billion doses delivered. That is breathtaking. That's what humankind can make possible. But the inequity is real. And what I believe is that the inequity is a manifestation of generations of social injustice and structural discrimination. And that's what we have to tackle. This isn't just about COVID-19. This is about saying we are interdependent. Helping you is helping me. It's helping each other. My actions affect someone else on the other side of the planet and vice versa. And only by solving this together am I keeping myself safe, my family safe, and living up to my own values. And that's true whether we're talking about COVID, whether we're talking about climate, or whether we're talking about the other great challenges that we face.
And I'm so pleased that you talked about collective action and collaboration, because one of the things that I have been incredibly impressed by throughout the whole of the pandemic is the way that multi-sector partnerships have sprung up to really, as you say, take action swiftly and decisively. Do you think that that's going to hold for the long term? And do you think that we're going to be able to now point back to this time and say, if we could achieve this with vaccines, why governments, why businesses, why social and civil societies can you not come together to do this for other pressing challenges?
We must. I think first, we have to do it for COVID-19, and we're not quite there. But there's sincere effort by incredibly capable people and organizations to do that. And of course, our organizations are working together to let everyone know what Charlotte already knows is the foundation incubated a campaign called Go Give One that allows anyone anywhere to give $5 to COVAX to buy a vaccine for someone in the world. And we realized the way we can get that to as many individuals as possible is by working with businesses like Salesforce, because businesses are how we can communicate to people who are the employees or the customers of businesses. So we are a nonprofit, we're working with a for-profit, and we're trying to connect with individuals around the world and have each person do their part. That's a small example of the multi-sectoral partnerships that are at work today to fight COVID-19. And I think absolutely we have to acknowledge the importance, the necessity of working across sectors to fight these great challenges. None of us can do it alone.
And that's one of the things that we kept hearing time and time again. As an individual employee, as an individual person, as a mother, a father, a son, a child, we've all been asking that simple question of what can I do to do my bit to support in the fight against COVID? And that was one of the reasons why we as Salesforce stepped up and so readily to work on the Go Give One campaign. And not only were we working that together, we brought our entire ecosystem together, another example of partnership. This was going to be actually one of my later questions, but Anil has brought that up already. So I'm just going to ask, what else can individuals be doing to come together to battle COVID? Because as you said, we're not through the woods yet.
I think the incorporating into your actions our interdependence is critical. In other words, understanding how whether you distance, wear a mask, get a vaccine, all of these things affect others. And so critically, what each individual can do is think about how my actions affect others and shape your actions accordingly. And I think, to me, what's critical to that, and I think this gets to peace and how we achieve peace, is empathy. Is stopping for a moment and thinking, it's a room full of people, and I can look at any set of eyes in this room, and I can say, this person who I don't know, you have a partner, you have a parent, you have a child, you have siblings, you love them, you want to care for them. And if I can help you do that by doing my part, then I'm reaching out and connecting to another human being. Empathy and interdependence and shaping our actions by how they affect others, that sounds simple, but I actually think that's the basis of tremendous power to achieve peace, to achieve health.
And we hear so often the phrase, peace and good health, or joy, happiness, peace and good health. Isn't that the basis of exactly why we say that all the time?
Absolutely. Health is the basis for peace. I actually had the opportunity 25 years ago also to work for Seeds of Peace and studied conflict resolution in the Middle East. I think all of this is connected. We need to have health, and health is a form of empowerment. Ensuring that people have health is a way we can enable them to achieve their full potential. And if people feel free, feel opportunity, I think conflict becomes less likely. I think conflict is often rooted in people actually feeling a lack of opportunity. And so health, I think, is an important ingredient to peace.
And Anil, over the last 19 months, you have seen so much. You've seen the devastating effects on communities, on individuals, and on societies that COVID-19 has had. So when you go home at night, what brings you peace?
My son. He was born on June 1st. I just told Charlotte I'm a new dad, and for the first time in my life. And his giggles and joy and seeing the unvarnished possibility of human existence in the eyes of a child, that gives me peace. It gives me hope.
I totally agree with that. There is nothing better than seeing the joy and the happiness in somebody else's face. We're coming to the end of our time. So I do just have one last question, and actually I think you answered it a little bit earlier. Are you optimistic for our future as a society?
I am. I insist on optimism, and that's a choice. Optimism is a choice. I'm more sober at this point in my life than 25 years ago when I was volunteering in West Africa. But it's like running a race. You start thinking you're running a sprint. Turns out it's a marathon. And you have to adjust your gait accordingly. And you have to take a deep breath and know it's going to take work, but it's possible. Peace is hard. One of the great lessons of my last few years is to acknowledge the degree to which I am complicit in injustice. Meaning I am a part of the structural racism in the United States that I want to dismantle. And facing those truths is hard. Seeing how I am accountable is hard. But once my eyes are open, they can't be unopened. And that gives me the opportunity to do my part, my individual part. And as long as I do that, I keep running. I keep running towards the end of that marathon, and it's probably a lot of marathons. It's probably a triathlon, but I'm optimistic that we can get there together, and I choose optimism because that's, I think, what allows us to do those great things together.
Wonderful. Just incredible words to finish on. I choose optimism. It's not a sprint, but we're going to get there. So the last thing that I'll leave you with is, please, if you would like to support the Go Give One campaign, you can find the details online or come and find somebody afterwards. And I wish you peace, joy, and happiness. And thank you very much, Anil, for an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Charlotte.